All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Tempered Leadership. I'm your host, Eric Rieger, and today I have the honor and pleasure of talking with my good friend, Eric Lazar of Speed Pro in the Chicago Loop. Eric, welcome to the show, and how are you, my friend?
Good, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's my pleasure, and every time we get together and have a chat, I always come away pretty excited. You and I kind of have very similar backgrounds, thought processes, and just kind of how we conduct ourselves and how we run businesses. So it's just it's an honor to have you on and share some of the wisdom that I'm sure you've learned over the years, and especially now through the challenges of the pandemic. Before we dive into any of that, though, I kind of like to start with origin stories. Your background, we can trace it all the way back to the Marine Corps. And, as we were talking a little bit before the show started, I'm sure the Marines gave you maybe a few nuggets from a leadership perspective. So how'd you get into the Marines, and what did you learn from that experience?
It's something that has stuck with me. I've been out, I guess November is going to be 34 years ago that I went in. I served 5 years active, 3 years reserve. What drove me in actually is because, at an early age, I realized that I wasn't a leader. Through, late elementary school, junior high school, and even early high school, I was a fat kid who really quit at whatever. As soon as things got tough, I quit. I was also the product of two very liberal Jewish educators, Northeast Jewish educators. We had three rules in the house: was don't drink and drive, don't lie, and don't defame the family name, which did not provide a whole lot of structure or discipline. As a result, also not a whole lot of confidence. To me, I recognized probably at the age of 15 or 16 that I probably needed more structure in my life in order to be successful. I was definitely a kid that was a follower, if I was even included in a group to follow with. So I knew I needed something more than myself, and just some of those internal, characteristic traits that never really developed as a child. So that drove me to looking at the military, and then as I looked at the military, I assessed what was really going to be the toughest and the greatest challenge, and could I put myself, through a test of that magnitude, and give myself the tools that I thought I needed in order to be successful in life.
And that's interesting because you mentioned that there were some ground rules growing up, but nothing of real structure, and you were kind of craving that structure and wanting to get your life on track. So again, a consistent theme with excuse me, everybody that I've had on the show so far is there's been this epiphany moment of realization that you need to change who you are to become the person you want to be. And so for you, it was the military, and so you joined up with the Marines, and obviously they're known for their structure. There's not a lot of leeway in terms of creativity and systems. Just making things up as you go. Did you find that extremely challenging to go from what you were experiencing in life to that? Had to be a culture shock of magnitudes I can't imagine.
Oh, it was an entire paradigm change from how I was brought up. Even as a child, we were really allowed to, live and die by, the decisions that we made. My parents were certainly not a fan of the military. However, I went in when I was 17. I signed up for it when I was 17, and, in order to go in before you're 18, you need your parents' signature. And so while they did not necessarily agree with the decision, they also, it was an opportunity for them to be put to the test and see if they were going to sort of abide by the rules that they had given us, and they signed for me. It was certainly a very interesting change from how I had been brought up. It was nothing that I had ever been exposed to. That level of discipline, that level of structure, and just wasn't part of the way we thought in the house and how we interacted with each other. It was a very informal environment that I grew up in.
So once you got into the Marines, was there any person or persons in particular that kind of took you under their wing? And because I got to figure it's pretty evident when people come in the culture shock, the like you said, the paradigm shift. So was there any person or persons in particular that kind of identified, hey, this guy might need a little bit of mentoring or special treatment or anything like that? Anybody who helped you along with your military career?
You know what? Yeah, special treatment. Special treatment connotation in the Marine Corps. Special treatment usually means an excess of discipline or harassment. So I got a little bit of that. And it wasn't like I was a wild child or off. It was just, again, it didn't have necessarily the internal fortitude. And I think everybody's treated relatively the same in the recruit training structure. It was after that, as I was getting, groomed to be a leader, as I was going up the chain and not really understanding, I think probably my own lack of confidence at that time. And Trump, as you, begin to obtain rank, is you sort of rely on those stripes on your shoulder for people to respect you, but it certainly goes beyond that. So there were people along the way that as I obtained rank and became more visible within the unit, that were able to give me the mentorship, the guidance, and some of it very, very profound. I mean, there are a few people that, again, 30 plus years later, that I am, greatly indebted to, and that I remember for taking me aside and giving me some really, really strong lessons on how I had to adjust my behavior in order to earn the respect of the Marines that, were under my guidance.
And I have to imagine that, at some point you were shifting and changing as a person, because, everybody who goes in the Marines doesn't ascend into a leadership role. I mean, there's definitely a rank and file, and you mentioned you were kind of climbing the food chain there. So what was it internally like? How are you approaching it from a mental aspect, that you went from this, self-described undisciplined person? Sometimes people just break under that pressure, and not everybody survives those types of situations. I'm not talking necessarily life and death, but they just can't hack it in that type of environment. So obviously you were able to adapt and change and grow. What was it, or were there just a gradual change, or was there, some event that really just kind of changed fundamentally who you were?
I thrived in it. I mean, I liked the spit and polish. I liked the uniform. I liked the aesthetics of it. So, those are very important things, and those were very easy ways to shine because it was very visible. Where I struggled was, again, in leadership, as I was, getting promoted, and it wasn't like I ascended to any, esteemed rank. I left, as a sergeant. But, even within that sort of the small unit structure is you've got, 5 guys or 7 guys or 8 guys. And then overall within the unit, just your rank, even people that weren't necessarily assigned to you, is, they still showed respect for the rank. But there was, a particular time that, as I sort of got into, as I became a non-commissioned officer, and had more responsibilities, I really relied on those corporal stripes to, for really counted on that for, the reason that people respected me. And I was sort of an abusive guy. I was a terrible leader. I was young. I think I picked up corporal at, 19. I wasn't ready. I hadn't really had it was just a matter of sort of time and grade and not screwing up that I, got to that, but I wasn't fit. And, I guess I sort of remember a very pivotal moment that scared the hell out of me into learning what the traits of a good leader were. And not that I hadn't been exposed to it prior. I just wasn't able to embrace it or have the confidence enough to incorporate it into my own style.
And that's something that you see, a lot today. Is there's, top-down leadership where a lot of times people follow out of fear. You like you said, you weren't necessarily the greatest quote unquote leader at the beginning. And then there's the leader who, people follow because they admire their traits. They have compassion, they have empathy. They're really in it for the people to help. To me, the number one job of a leader is to build other leaders. We've talked about that before on the show. We're in this for however much time we're given on this planet, and then as we mature in our careers, and the time we have left gets shorter and shorter, what we do with our businesses and how we leave that legacy. To me, part of it is I've had talks with people about succession planning and things like that. And if you look statistically, a lot of the companies that don't survive generational changes and things like that is they try to bring somebody in from the outside into a culture that they didn't help build, they're not immersed in, and then everything just kind of shifts when the founder or the leader leaves. Talk to me a little bit about what that shift has been like for you, because obviously you figured it out. I mean, the first time you and I talked, it was like talking to an old friend and somebody who just gets it. We're kind of aligned with our philosophies, and we're just trying to do the best possible thing we can for everybody every day. So what was the process? You said you had that moment. Over the years, how have you developed your leadership style as you moved into, you did TV in New York, sales in the TV in that. So let's kind of transition into that. So how did you start developing more of a leadership style through that into where you are today?
I struggled. It's a constant struggle. I mean, there are probably 3 or 4 occasions throughout my career in different things that I've done where I have had people take me aside and just say, your behavior is unacceptable. I sort of, I for many, many years, I continually reverted to sort of the very safe lead by fear type of approach. And probably because in some respects I was a little bit lost. That was sort of the easiest thing to grasp onto when you're uncomfortable in your position and you're trying to assert yourself, or you've been elevated to a position that you hadn't been in before. I've been very fortunate to have mentors and leaders around me that were able to be candid and also firm and just say, again, this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable behavior. So it's something that I continually grapple with and struggle with. I look back, and so you used the word legacy a little bit earlier. What's the legacy that I want to leave? I look back, to 1991 when my father passed, who was a principal in a district, school district. And, I never really, he and I, he died when I was 21, and he and I had a little bit of a challenging relationship. I wouldn't say it was, it wasn't a bad one, but it wasn't a great one because I didn't understand his style of leadership. I saw him as being soft. What I didn't really understand was sort of he was soft. It was sort of, walk soft but carry a big stick. And to me, again, I think because of my own incompetency or ineptness, or just that I hadn't developed enough, I saw that as a sign of weakness. But when it came to leaving a legacy, I also remember his funeral, where there were 2,500 or 3,000 people standing room only, people that had come out when he was a camp counselor, that from 25 or 30 years back, that had read his obituary in the paper and came to his funeral, and the letters we got and the impact that he had as a leader, as a mentor. And I would say that's one of the pivotal things. So even when I digress, I think back to the legacy that I want to leave, and how do I want to impact people? How do I want people to think of me? And that's sort of a guiding motivation for me. And again, it's like, sure, I fail along the ways, and I revert back to, a person that I do not want to be. But I also look at that as, one of those things that's sort of that grounding moment that I've got to reflect on. It's like, okay, I want to be better. I want a legacy like his.
There's so many good things you just said in there. It's like I don't even know where to start from a nugget perspective, but and again, we have some similarities in our background, so let's just kind of break it down a bit. You talked the importance of mentorship. It can't be overstated. There's, at least for, again, my perspective, and again your perspective, of having people who you have a comfortable enough relationship to where they can pull you aside and call you out on behaviors. And I've had the exact same thing where I have a very close mentor. His name is Doug Diamond. He was the first guest on the show. I wouldn't be here without the help and guidance that he provided. And when he started, seeing that behavior and the scarring and damage I was doing to the team with my behaviors, he just relentlessly stayed on me for a year and a half about getting into therapy and getting my personal issues from my past taken care of, so that I could, learn to be a better leader. And you're right. It's never like a switch flips and now all of a sudden you're a great leader. I think any great leader will be humble enough to say, yeah, it's a constant struggle every single day. It's because it's so easy to revert to those behaviors, right? I mean, that's the path of
great process.
Yeah, it's the path of least resistance to yell at somebody when something's not right. I mean, it doesn't take any caring or any self-control to just lash out at somebody when they're not doing, if they let you down or they're not doing what you expect. But that's a reflection, what I found is it's a reflection of my leadership ability to set people up for success. And when somebody's not hitting the bar, the first thing I do now is go back and go, okay, where was I not clear? How did I not set this person up? Where did we fail in the communication? It's a whole different mindset now. But you're right, it is easy to slip back into those patterns, especially if you're not in your best mental state, if you're having a bad day or if you're having a bad week and things like that. So huge to have your inner circle or somebody that you can count on, somebody you can go to who will call you out on those things and help get you right sized. And, for me, it's Doug, and people such as yourself. Like, I know I could reach out at any time and you and I could have a chat and we can share that experience because we're in that position right now. And it's hard for somebody who's not quite, either running an organization or have the experience to relate. They can maybe sympathize or empathize with you, but personally, they just maybe not quite getting the full weight of the experience. So that's kind of a really important thing, I think, from a leadership perspective. Another point you brought up from legacy, that was, you and I had an extremely similar experience. My dad passed away in 2013 and he was a truck driver. So, you don't necessarily look at truck drivers, and I'm stereotyping, but, in the grand scheme of things, when people start talking about leaders, in the pantheon of leadership, there's not a lot of truck drivers that come to mind as the first thought people have. But my dad was always a person where, early on, I didn't have a good relationship with him all because he was gone 6 days out of the week. So he was basically not there. And the day he was home, he had to fix his truck, pay the bills, deal with my mother, and that's a whole other situation. And then he would just leave again. And so, there was this broken part of our relationship, for the longest time. And then as he got older and had some health issues and he wasn't working as much and we connected, but I always remembered he had this standard. He wore a uniform. He had the American flag patch on it. He had his name sewed in it. So, I mean, he dressed the part that he dressed for the job he wanted. And he thought, I'm a transportation engineer. He always referred to himself as that. Like, I make things move around the country. Without me, without our services, this country comes to a halt. And he took that he acted with a lot of pride in his work. And that was instilled at me at an early age. He tried to be an entrepreneur. He failed miserably. He went bankrupt from it, but he gave it his best. I mean, he never graduated high school, so he didn't have any business training. He didn't have any business sense, but he had determination. Nothing was going to stop him. And so all the years he was doing that and going around the country, he made these connections with people because he was a good person. And he always believed in doing the job. If you're going to do a job, you do it right and you do it to its finish. And when he passed away, it was the same thing. The wake was 8+ hours and the line didn't stop. I mean, it just was out the door. The whole thing was, and my mom and I were standing there and we're like, we didn't know 95% of the people that were there. And they came from all over the country when they heard he passed away. And every single one of them had a story about how he touched them. And I was like, I could live to be 150 and I'm never going to have this kind of impact across the country like he did. And I went, well, wait a minute, maybe I can. So that was kind of that legacy wake up call of, it's not about how big you build the company, how much money you make, it's about the lives you touch. And so that really started changing my perspective on how I conducted myself and how I wanted to structure the business. So thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's, it's unfortunate circumstances that, when we lose people that we're close to and that we love, but I mean, it can have such a profound impact and change on the direction of your life. If you're going through it right at the moment, you may not see it, but then after time, it's like, man, that can have more impact on you than anything else in your life.
Without sounding callous, I would tell you his death in some ways may have been the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I learned to appreciate the value of touching people and impacting people and the legacy. And it doesn't mean, again, that I've been faultless through that time. I've had tremendous transgressions, digressions. But it's not like I've forgotten about that or that I don't look back on it or try to clutch to it. I think if that had not had happened, I don't know if I would have evolved as I have, which, and I certainly believe I've evolved, and there's still a long way to grow, and it's a path and it's a journey. But I think I took a huge step as a result, which I don't even know if I would have been able to recognize even to this point, had that not happened to me at that time in my life.
And I think that's the gift that we're both giving at this point, is that there may be people out there listening right now whose parents are still with them. And this might be the take a step back and look at what they're doing. If you've got good relationship and you've got good parents, obviously this doesn't apply to everybody in every situation, but this might be a chance for other people to reevaluate their relationship with their parents and what they're done and look at it from a different lens. And who knows where, what that does for them. But yeah, I totally get that too, because it wasn't until the last couple of years, my dad was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer and we had a 4-year journey with that. But, again, I totally relate to what you're saying about, not trying to sound callous, but it did have an important impact on myself. And I can totally relate to what you're explaining there. So, again, and that's two characteristics of a leadership that you're exhibiting is humility and transparency. Like you're humble enough to say, I need to get better all the time. It's a constant struggle. And here's my story. I'm willing to share my faults with you and part of that journey. So to me, that's part of what leadership's all about, because if you don't have those characteristics, it just becomes that top down, do as I say and don't question me.
Yeah. And, I think one of the best stories that I could, that I think is relevant, and again, sort of the lens that I look through life now with, is, he died of cancer. It was about a 7-month battle. And approximately 2 weeks before he died, he was in the hospital and he and I were alone. And I simply asked him could you have had a better son? Could have I been a better son? And he looked at me, and probably a question that you don't ask an honest man, he said, yes, but a better son would have had a better father. And it's how I look at all of my relationships is, one, it gave me, sort of amnesty from my responsibility while, and he accepted his, or that there was joint responsibility. And even for me as a young, at a young age, as a, boy, as a teenager, as a young man, but it's how I look at all of my relationships is, could have I been a better friend? Yes, but a better friend would have had a better friend, or whatever that might be. So it's my view of the relationships. And so I always want to, I always have to accept my responsibility. And that's how I look at leadership also is, could you have been a better team member? Sure, but a better team member would have had a better leader. So again, it's got applications to so much, and so that's how I view life. It's through those glasses of just that moment in time.
And yeah, I mean, it's part of the journey. And that's, again, you just nailed it. To me, that's one of the prime characteristics of leadership is, that humility to always be looking to get better, and, turning that light on yourself when something doesn't, the light goes on the people when they're doing the right things. And then the light goes on yourself when something's not right. It's always, if they're doing good, it's because, they're gifted, they've been given the proper training, and we want the spotlight to be on the people doing the work. And when something's not right, that's the hardest part of leadership. When things are going smooth, like if you're just, beating all your goals and everybody's just loving you, I mean, isn't that the easiest thing in the world, to come to work and just be like, oh my God, I'm such an awesome leader. Look at what all this good stuff that's going on. Like, anybody could step into that role when everything's going good. But man, oh man, a pandemic hits, there's a downturn in the economy. All of a sudden, nobody's spending any money. Those are some challenging times to try and keep the spirits up at the office, I would say.
Oh,
What's your experience?
Yeah, I struggle with that. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I have fallen victim to, the depression, the anxiety, the negativity, and yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I would not consider myself, the epitome of great leadership during these times. I mean, I've done the best that I can, but I'm human. And these are struggles for me every single day. It's like, I try to keep a great face, but I also believe that there's got to be, you've got to be honest. And I think if I always question people that are always very optimistic and very happy. I think maybe that's the pessimist or the realist in me. And I think over the last couple of years, I've just given way to not having such a shell, and just letting me be, who I am, which may not be the best leadership traits, because I think there are probably some responsibilities that I'm not able to uphold. But also trying to fight who I am naturally, has, that also has, that has challenges. And so, yeah, it's been a struggle to try to keep everybody uplifted and try to do the same thing for myself. So it's been a tremendous test.
What I found has helped us through this challenge is, I mean, literally the framework for this was built several years ago when, my coach and mentor started getting me into therapy, and I started dealing with some of that, and then learning the trigger signs. But also, I've built up trust with our leadership team internally. So where, if one of us is having a bad day, there's a safe space for us to vent, or for us to do that without bringing that to the entire team. And smaller companies, I mean, it's hard to do if there's only 5 people in the company. It's not like you can build a leadership team of 3 other people, and then there's just one person left out of the venting scenario, or things like that. So this doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, but that's, as we've grown, that's what we've done, is that we've built this little trust. And if any one of us are having some struggles, there's a safe space where there's no judgment, and that person can, get that out and understand that there's other people there that have their back. And then that presents less of a challenge to the team, because you do want to create a safe space, and as to the extent you can. And I don't know, personally, I couldn't imagine being in the restaurant industry right now, through this, because how do you paint a rosy picture of, 2 years where we're either going to be shut down on a regular basis, or we're going to have less than 50% of our business. It's coming up on winter in Chicago, so it's not like we're going to be having outdoor seating, unless somebody comes up with, a parka solution, where,
Right.
and keeping the food warm and all that good stuff. So I would struggle. I mean, I don't know if I could survive in that type of an industry. So, my suggestions here, they do kind of have a shelf life depending on the industry you're in, and the size of your company and things like that. But this is why we do this, is to, share our thoughts. And, I'm right there with you. There are times where, you just don't see the rosy outcome, and you're struggling with the depression and with the anxiety that come with owning a business or being a leader. And to me, it's vital for our own survival and mental health that we have these little networks of people that we can call and just say, hey, I'm having a bad day. I'm having a really bad day. I don't want to get out of bed today.
Without a doubt. I mean, listen, it's, in the printing business, it's very similar. We're manufacturing. We rely on, we were 50% trade shows. We're situated right next to McCormick Place, which is the largest, event venue in the country. Restaurants, retail, all of these things. I can't pretend that the business is there. It's not like we're working, again, and maybe in an IT infrastructure where you're always trying to improve the network or improve the software, and that there are things to do for your existing clients and to make it better. We either have printing or we don't have printing. There's no hiding that. So, if things aren't going through the press, if we're not getting those orders in, we had to let staff go. There's no way to hide that. There were some things that we did. We undertook a program to raise money for first responders early on in the pandemic. We will do, I think we've always, as an organization, been generous beyond our means in terms of donating to not-for-profits or doing things at a severely discounted rate. Even now in the pandemic, one, probably because people need it. Two, because I would just like to keep the guys busy, whether or not we're making money. So we try to hide it in some ways. We try to mask it in ways that we can. But it's certainly it's those are very challenging things for a couple of industries where you just don't have that ability to mask.
Yeah, and a great part of that is that, there's one of my favorite books now, Simon Sinek's latest book is called The Infinite Game. I've read it like 4 or 5 times now. And the mindset that you just described of, it's not that we're trying to have the best year ever every year. Circumstances are dictating that, hey, we're just trying to survive. We just want to be here in 2021, and then we'll worry about profit in 2021. And we'll just kind of navigate through this. And it's really about living to see the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year. And that's a healthy mindset to have that, like, hey, we're not trying to, cut as much staff so we can still make 20, 30, 40% margins. We're just trying to keep as many people busy and navigate through this. And hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel coming soon on this pandemic. And we can start to project when things will get back to more normal. Right. I think that's a healthy mindset.
Yeah, this is not a year of profit. This is a year of survival. That's it. I will consider this a win if we see 2021 or some point in and live to see 2022. I mean, that's all we can hope for is and that we and I think through that is that we maintain our integrity. I think this is a great measure of who you are as an organization. It's when things get tough and you get desperate is when your character and your integrity is tested. And we never want to change how, basically how we view those things and how we want to be perceived and, again, who we are as an organization. So making sure that we maintain that we're not cutting corners, that we're doing things, we're lending the same level of service and the same quality of product that we did when things were good, that we're doing when they're bad. And hopefully that, I'm a little bit of a believer in karma. I'm not, a little bit spiritual, not religious, but, I think all this stuff comes around. And so hopefully what we demonstrate now will provide benefit in the future, and that we continue to treat our guys, with respect and, that again, it's like that we're doing, we're doing now when things are tough that we did when we were, when they weren't so tough.
And I think that's a saying a lot of people have out there is, it's not what you did for them, but it's how you made them feel. And that's right now is the most important thing is, if you're consistent in that delivery of service and that experience, as it were, people remember that, especially in tough times, because it is so easy when, I don't want to say desperate, but when you're in a challenging time, it's easy to say, hey, if we're in survival mode, we have to do these things. We have to cut corners. We have to, do these types of things, and to be able to stick to your core values and your principles and say, well, this is more important than anything else. And we're going to figure out how to do this and still survive. People remember that because they'll know that there's a consistency of your character. And that's, again, a sign of a good leader, because it's easy to lead. And when times are great and, the economy's booming and everybody's buying, now is a real test of leadership. And, let's talk a little bit about your business. I think it's 2015, you've been in the printing, and you have this phrase, surface impact. So
Right.
talk to me about, tell me a little bit about your business and how you guys are helping rebrand Chicago and everywhere else that you do business.
Sure. So, we're a large format digital printing company. So we like to say anything bigger than a business card or a brochure is pretty much our space. Banners, wall murals, trade shows, exhibits, posters, vehicle wraps, so on and so forth. So, so the larger end of the business. We coined surface impact is really, both my business partner, Rebecca, and I, we worked in television for a number of years together. We come from the advertising marketing space. We approach this not as being printers. I don't think anybody grows up to want to be a printer. We bought the business in 2015. We really want, because of our advertising marketing experience, we really wanted to approach this as a little bit more of an agency-esque kind of lens, and a little bit more experiential, is that it wasn't going to be so transactional. It wasn't going to be commodity based, is, how many posters and what kind of paper do you want it on. Is we really, as much as we could, is take the opportunity where appropriate to understand who the brand is, what they were trying to communicate, who their internal customer is, who their external customer is, and be able to weave that into the graphics. And so it may just be in the subtleties, is, maybe there's a texture that we could use, or a new material, or a dimension that we can suggest and layer in by knowing some of these things. We don't, profess to be a design shop, but we do want to, we want to be beyond just a production facility. So surface impact really integrates that, is that it's our 360-degree view of a space. Is what can we do just beyond the walls? Is can we leverage, the ceiling, the floors, the doors, the glass? Can we add dimension? How do we help take this investment that somebody's going to make and provide an ROI, for, just sort of not only a monetary ROI, and, whether, particularly for like a retail space, but a brand ROI. Is what is that message? Is that message lasting? Is that experience with that graphic going to impact that person, that it leaves them with a lasting memory? So that's really where surface impact evolved. So it's, again, we've been at it for 5.5 years. And I would say, and admittedly, it's like, I don't think we have any technology that anybody else doesn't have access to or could get. For us, is we really define ourselves by the customer journey. Is we want people to have an absolutely phenomenal experience. We think that's what's particularly unique to us. Not mere, certainly we have our surface impact philosophy, and I think we take a lot more time with our clients in terms of understanding their brand or trying to find solutions. But it's really what that customer journey looks like, is that people know that they can trust us implicitly, that we have a tremendous amount of integrity, that we're never going to take advantage of a situation. We're not going to try to upsell anybody into something that they don't need. But we want people to feel safe, and I think that's, particularly in today's environment, which is so polarizing, and I think there's so much hostility, is we want this to be a place where it's relaxing and people feel safe and they don't feel like they've got to negotiate, or if the price is too high, is that they can be candid with us and that we can find a way to work with somebody that's good for us all. I think that's what makes us unique, is we want everybody to leave with a smile on their face. Is, we realize that we may not be the right fit for everybody. We never want to lose a client, but we absolutely won't accept having a client that's that's unhappy with us. That's that we haven't done everything we can to resolve a situation. That's the kind of, if we're going to have a client breakup, which we've had very few of, one where people have ever, where they would ever question our integrity would be just entirely unacceptable to us. So that's not why we're ever going to lose a client. It may be overpriced. And, I tell people at some point along the line in this relationship, there's a very good chance we're going to screw something up. It's how we react to that, how we resolve that. And, we're very honest about that. So, that to us, that's really how we've tried to establish the business and sort of our unique selling proposition.
And I'll tell you, I mean, just, from seeing the results of what you guys produce over there, integrity matters, ethics matter. And that's it really, what the effort you put in results in the product that you get out at the other end. And in a space where, things can be seen as a commodity, you've really gone above and beyond to differentiate yourself by putting the effort into the relationship. And I think that's, it's a credit to, again, that's leadership, but it's a credit to yourself and your partner. And that's how you want to model the business. And to me, that's how you build lasting relationships. You're transparent with people. If you identify something's not right, you either want to fix it or move on. There's a lot of lessons that can be learned from that. And I'll tell you, you guys should, if you haven't already, you guys should be up for that Better Business Bureau Torch Award. You should throw your hat in the ring for that and use this interview as part of your submission, because the people should know. I mean, people, I think by and large, people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And you've just exemplified why, people should want to work with your organization, and why other leaders should model themselves after the way you guys are approaching this. In my opinion, all businesses should operate under that ethical guidelines. We know, especially living in Chicago, that doesn't always happen.
We've made it very easy for us, quite honestly. It's like we've cheated. Without sounding crude, my business partner and I, very early on, coming from the television space, where you had media buyers that, were tough, and they treated the salespeople, I think, in certainly in a way that I didn't want to be treated when I was in sales, and that I would never accept as, if I was the leader of some of these organizations, that I would have ever let my media buyers treat people. Is we immediately established a no assholes policy. We don't work with difficult people. Is if somebody exhibits behavior where they treat us, in any manner that we are not comfortable with, if they're, just abusive to us or abusive to our team, or they just prove themselves to be unreasonably difficult, we stop the relationship. I mean, in 1 week, both my business and partner and I had 2 inquiries where we could, we asked a lot of questions, and it may seem sort of senseless to some people. It's like they just want a price, but we really, again, we want to understand what the application is going to be. And so we may ask a few more questions so we get it right. And that way we're not redoing something, and really to save the client money is that, a lot of people don't know what they're asking for. So we take that extra time to ask a few extra questions instead of producing like, well, this is what you asked for. I know it's not what you wanted, but, you didn't want to answer my questions and we had 2 people in the course of a week, each of us had one, that sort of took issue with it and treated us as, just in a very disrespectful manner, and said, hey, listen, I don't think this is a great fit. And let me suggest, here are 3 other printers in the market that it may just be a better fit. So we cheated. We don't have difficult clients because we weed them out right away. So it's very easy for us. Quite honestly, it's very easy for us to have good relationships.
Well, I'm sure that helps. That helps. Yeah, that helps with your culture too, because I got to figure the employees feel protected by that they're not going to get into a space where, you're just trying to get business for the sake of business, and then somebody's going to abuse them, or they're going to have unrealistic deadlines all the time, and being asked to perform miracles because you sold something for 20% of what it was worth, and now we got to move mountains to get that done. So that's another way leaders can create safe spaces for their team, by having those ground rules. And you might say it's cheating and cutting corners, but I think that's a bedrock of your ethical decisions, your integrity. So kudos to you for, it sounds easy, but I'll tell you again, especially in a challenging time like a pandemic, that could be one of the first challenges you face is, well, maybe we take this business this one time just because, we want to keep the doors open another day. And again, that's the strength of character being tested.
It's never worth it. And, for us, among the reasons that we have our own businesses, we wanted to enjoy coming in every day. And our clients are our lifeblood. And if we don't enjoy working with our clients, if you have one bad client that turns your day, it's going to impact the clients that you like and that you value. So we need to eliminate any of those distractions. And so it's never going to be worth it. There's just, sure. There are times that it had been very tempting, particularly at the beginning, to take those clients on. It's like, we need to get the money. It's a fantastic hit. It's not worth it. It's a distraction, and it will impact other aspects of your business. That it just, I don't know what the dollar amount is. It's like, I'm going to endure this stuff. And hopefully, something I wouldn't say that we're beyond a dollar amount, but boy, we have to be really big. I'd like to think that we're not, but listen, we're all human, and I think I think we've had enough temptation and we've been able to resist, but I don't know what it would be, and hopefully I'm, I don't know, I say hopefully I'm never tempted. I don't know, maybe I would be a little bit more tempted.
Well, we'll have to have you back on the show in a year and say, how did that go? Did you figure your number out? Well, Eric, I really appreciate the time. This was, it's always great to talk to you. I know we could probably spend another couple hours because we barely scratched the surface on some of the things. So hopefully you'll come back for a future episode. And I always like to give opportunity, to give out your contact information, because I'm sure there's, people listening that would want to get in touch with you either to talk more about leadership, or maybe they've got some projects that they would want to have your input on. How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. Easiest way is to email me, which is Eric, ERIC.Lazar, LAZAR @speedpro, as in fastandprofessional.com. And the phone number of the office is 312-846-1441. And people can always just go to our website, speedprochicagoloop.com, and track me down. I'm available on LinkedIn. I accept all friendships on Facebook. So, I welcome anybody who wants to contact me, and I'm always happy to chat about this. And, hopefully with the benefit of me picking up some nuggets and finding, an additional mentor that I can reach out to.
And it's fairly obvious by our conversation here that you do accept all requests, because that's, we're connected. So you take everybody and anybody. So no matter how damaged they are.
Now, the bar's not all that high, brother.
It's really not. It's really not. Well, again, thank you for being on. I always appreciate your transparency, your feedback, your wisdom. I hope you've had an enjoyable experience here, and we look forward to talking to you in the near future.
This was awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. All my pleasure.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and attention again today. Please be careful out there on your leadership journey. We hope we've given you a few nuggets to think about. And as always, we will see you next week with another fascinating guest. Be well and take care of yourselves.